Have you ever been scrolling through social media seeing people post about their weekend trips to Europe or their brand new Tesla and wondered where exactly you fit in the grand scheme of American wealth? Maybe you are lying awake at night staring at your bank account balance, trying to figure out if you are doing better or worse than everyone else your age. Or perhaps you have heard people throw around terms like middle class, upper middle class, and wealthy, but you have absolutely no idea what those actually mean in real dollar amounts. Well, today I am going to pull back the curtain on something most Americans are completely clueless about: the actual net worth numbers that separate the upper class from the middle class from the lower class in America. And I guarantee some of these figures are going to shock you. Some might make you feel pretty good about where you stand financially, while others might be a serious wake up call that changes how you think about money forever. I am Hamster. I help people understand the real story behind wealth building and personal finance. If you are tired of guessing where you stand financially and want to know exactly how you compare to everyone else in America, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Before we dive into these eye-opening numbers, let me ask you something. When you think about being wealthy in America, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture someone with a massive mansion, multiple luxury cars, and the ability to buy whatever they want without checking their bank account. Or maybe you think about that neighbor who seems to have everything figured out, taking multiple vacations per year and never seeming stressed about money. Here is the thing that is going to surprise you. The reality of American wealth distribution is nothing like what most people imagine. We have been conditioned by movies, social media, and our own assumptions to think wealth works one way, when the actual numbers tell a completely different story. And understanding these numbers is not just about satisfying your curiosity. It is about giving you a clear roadmap for where you want to go financially. Think about it this way. If you are trying to get in better physical shape, would you not want to know what the average person weighs or how much they exercise? If you are trying to improve your grades, would you not want to know how you compare to other students? Money works exactly the same way. When you understand where you stand compared to everyone else, you can make informed decisions about your spending, saving, and investing. A 2023 study from the American Psychological Association found that financial concerns are the single largest source of stress for adults under 50. And much of that stress comes from not knowing whether you are on track. By the end of this video, you will have a clear benchmark, and more importantly, you will know that your worth is not defined by a number on a screen. The most recent data from the Federal Reserve shows something that might blow your mind. The median American household net worth reached $205,000 in 2022. That is a 36% increase from 2019, which represents the largest percentage growth since the Fed started conducting these surveys in their modern format back in 1989. But here is where it gets interesting. And this is something that reveals just how skewed wealth distribution really is in America. While the median net worth is around $205,000, the average net worth is over $1.15 million, $1,150,000 to be exact. Think about what that means for a second. The average is more than 5.5 times higher than the median. That is like saying half of all people are shorter than 5 feet 6 inches, but the average height is over 8 feet tall. It does not make mathematical sense unless you have some extremely tall people pulling that average way up. And that is exactly what is happening with wealth in America. The concentration of wealth at the very top is so extreme that it completely distorts the averages. According to the latest data, the top 1% of households hold almost 32% of all wealth in the United States. Let me put that in perspective. 1 out of every 100 families controls nearly 1/3 of everything valuable in the entire country. That is like 3 people at a 100-person party owning 32% of all the pizza, drinks, and everything else combined. This wealth concentration creates distinct tiers that separate American households into clearly defined economic classes. And these are not just abstract categories that economists made up to sound smart. These are real financial boundaries that determine everything from where you can afford to live to what opportunities are available to your children. So let us break down exactly what net worth puts you in each class, starting from the bottom and working our way up. And fair warning, some of these numbers might make you realize you are in a different class than you thought you were. Before we start, it is worth noting that millions of Americans have a negative net worth, meaning they owe more than they own. Student loans, credit card debt, and medical bills are the main culprits. If you are in negative territory, you are not alone. The path to positive net worth starts with a plan, and we will talk about that later. The lower class, sometimes called the poverty class, represents Americans with the most limited financial resources. If your net worth falls between $0 and $12,000, you are technically in the lower class according to the latest Federal Reserve data. The median net worth for this group is just over $5,800. $5,800. That is less than what many people spend on a single vacation or a decent used car. Now, before you start feeling sorry for everyone in this category, remember that net worth includes people of all ages and life circumstances. A 22-year-old recent college graduate who just landed their first job might have a negative net worth due to student loans, but they are obviously not destined to stay in the lower class forever. Same goes for someone who just went through a divorce or dealt with major medical expenses. Life happens, and net worth can fluctuate dramatically based on timing and circumstances. But what characterizes the lower class is not just the low net worth numbers, it is the financial behaviors and constraints that come with having limited resources. People in this category often live paycheck to paycheck, have little to no emergency savings, and struggle to access traditional forms of credit. When unexpected expenses arise, they might be forced to rely on high-interest payday loans or credit cards, which only makes their financial situation worse over time. The harsh reality is that when you have limited financial resources, everything costs more. You cannot buy in bulk to save money. You cannot put down large deposits to get better rates on utilities or housing. You might not qualify for the best interest rates on loans, assuming you can get approved for loans at all. It is expensive to be poor in America, which makes climbing out of the lower class particularly challenging. Moving up the ladder, we get to the lower middle class, which encompasses net worth between $12,000 and $45,000. The median net worth for this group is around $38,000. This might sound like a significant jump from the lower class, and in many ways it is. But the lower middle class faces its own unique set of challenges. People in this category often include skilled workers, technicians, service industry employees, and others who have steady employment but limited opportunities for significant wealth accumulation. They might own modest homes, have some retirement savings through employer-sponsored plans, and maintain basic emergency funds, but they are still vulnerable to economic shocks like job loss or major medical expenses. Here is what makes the lower middle class particularly interesting. They often earn too much to qualify for government assistance programs, but not enough to feel financially secure. They are caught in a middle ground where they have to be incredibly strategic about every financial decision because there is not much room for error. Many households in the lower middle class carry significant consumer debt. The average credit card balance for this group is around $5,200, and the average car loan is about $12,000. These monthly payments eat into any potential savings, making it hard to build a buffer. The true middle class, often considered the backbone of the American economy, has net worth ranging from $45,000 to $160,000. The median net worth for this class sits at $148,000. Now, this is where things get really interesting because the middle class represents what most Americans consider the standard for financial success. These are the households that have managed to achieve the traditional markers of the American dream. They typically own their homes, have established retirement accounts, can afford modest vacations, and have enough financial stability to weather minor economic disruptions without falling into debt. But even within the middle class, there is significant variation in financial security and lifestyle. Someone at the lower end of the middle class range might still feel financial pressure and need to be careful about major purchases. Meanwhile, someone at the upper end might feel quite comfortable and have multiple investment accounts beyond their basic retirement savings. What unites the middle class is their ability to plan for the future while meeting their current needs. They are not just surviving paycheck to paycheck, but they are also not wealthy enough to stop thinking about money altogether. They represent a sweet spot where financial discipline and smart planning can lead to genuine wealth accumulation over time. Here is something that might surprise you about the middle class. Many households in this category are one or two bad decisions away from falling back into the lower middle class. A medical emergency, a job loss, a divorce, or even a major car repair can wipe out years of progress. This is why having a solid emergency fund is so critical. For many middle-class families, the majority of their net worth is tied up in home equity. A typical middle-class household might have $100,000 in home equity, $30,000 in retirement accounts, and $10,000 in cash. That house looks great on paper, but you cannot use it to pay for groceries. Liquidity matters. But here is where the story gets even more fascinating because we haven't even talked about the upper middle class yet, and that is where the numbers start to get really surprising. The upper middle class, also known as the mass affluent, is where things start to get really interesting from a wealth perspective. If you have a net worth between $160,000 and $700,000, congratulations. You have officially entered the upper middle class club. And honestly, this is where a lot of people start to feel like they are actually wealthy, even though they are still technically not considered rich by American standards. Now, here is something that might surprise you about the upper middle class. Many of these households are what financial planners call Henrys. That stands for high earner, not rich yet. And yes, that is actually a real term that financial professionals use with a straight face. Imagine walking into a bank and having someone tell you that you are a Henry. It sounds like something you would call your uncle who still thinks flip phones are cutting-edge technology. But jokes aside, Henrys represent a fascinating group in American wealth distribution. These are typically households earning somewhere north of $130,000 annually. They are doctors, lawyers, engineers, successful business managers, and other professionals who have leveraged their education and skills into high-paying careers. They live in nice neighborhoods, send their kids to good schools, and can afford to max out their retirement accounts without breaking a sweat. Yet many people in the upper middle class do not actually feel wealthy at all. And that is because of something economists call lifestyle inflation. As their incomes increased over the years, so did their expenses. The modest apartment became a nice house. The reliable used car became a luxury SUV. The occasional dinner out became regular fine dining experiences. Before they knew it, they were earning 3 times what they made a decade ago, but somehow still felt like they were living paycheck to paycheck. This is actually one of the most common financial traps in America. People assume that earning more money automatically means having more money, but that is only true if you do not increase your spending proportionally. The upper middle class often falls into this trap because they can afford lifestyle upgrades that make them feel successful, but those same upgrades prevent them from building wealth as quickly as they could. Here is something else that characterizes the upper middle class. They are often heavily invested in real estate, both as their primary residence and as investment properties. Real estate becomes a common wealth-building strategy for this group because it provides both property appreciation and potential rental income. They understand that their high incomes put them in higher tax brackets, so they look for investments that offer tax advantages. But the upper middle class also faces unique challenges that lower income groups do not have to worry about. They often do not qualify for any government assistance programs even during economic hardships. They pay higher tax rates on their income, and they are expected to fund their own retirement entirely, since Social Security will only replace a small percentage of their pre-retirement income. Many upper middle class families spend $20,000 to $40,000 per year on private school tuition. While they believe they are investing in their children's future, that money could instead compound into millions over 20 years. There is no easy answer, but the trade-off is real. Moving beyond the upper middle class, we enter what most people would consider truly wealthy territory. The upper class starts at a net worth of around $700,000. But even within the upper class, there are dramatic variations that most people do not understand. If you have a net worth between $700,000 and about $3.5 million, you are in the lower tier of the upper class. You are definitely wealthy by any reasonable standard, but you are not necessarily living the lifestyle that most people associate with being rich. You might have a nice house in an expensive neighborhood, luxury cars, and the ability to travel extensively, but you are probably still working, still thinking about money, and still making financial decisions based on your budget, even if that budget is much larger than most people's. The real separation in American wealth happens when we start talking about the top 1%, and this is where the numbers get absolutely mind-blowing. According to the most recent data, you need a net worth of at least $6.2 million to crack the top 1% of American households. But here is where it gets complicated. Different sources give different estimates for this threshold. Some financial institutions put the top 1% threshold at nearly $14 million in net worth. Others suggest it is closer to $11 million. The variation exists because measuring extreme wealth is incredibly difficult. When someone has hundreds of millions or billions in assets, those numbers can fluctuate dramatically based on market conditions, making it hard to pin down exact thresholds. And then there is the top 0.1%, which requires a net worth of approximately $68 million. These are the people who own or have founded successful businesses, inherited substantial family wealth, or made extremely successful high-risk investments. They have access to investment opportunities that regular wealthy people do not even know exist. Private equity, venture capital, hedge funds, and other exclusive investment vehicles that require minimum investments in the millions. What is fascinating about American wealth distribution is how quickly the numbers escalate as you move up the ladder. The difference between middle class and upper middle class is a few hundred thousand. But the difference between upper class and top 1% is millions, and the difference between top 1% and top 0.1% is tens of millions. This creates a situation where even wealthy people can feel financially insecure when they compare themselves to those above them. Someone with a $5 million net worth might feel rich until they spend time around people with $50 million net worths. It is all about perspective and social comparison. It is worth noting that a significant portion of top percent wealth is inherited. Studies show that about 1/3 of millionaires received an inheritance. That does not diminish their achievements, but it does mean that comparing yourself to someone who started with a $500,000 head start is not a fair fight. But here is something that might change how you think about all of these numbers. Net worth varies dramatically by age. According to the Federal Reserve data, the median net worth for Americans under 35 is about $42,000. For those aged 35 to 44, it is about $145,000. For ages 45 to 54, it jumps to around $255,000. For ages 55 to 64, it is about $375,000. And for those 65 and older, it is roughly $430,000. So if you are 28 years old with a net worth of $55,000, you are actually ahead of the curve, even though you might look at the overall class thresholds and think you are behind. Age matters enormously. Do not compare yourself to a 55-year-old who has been saving for 3 decades when you are just starting out. And geography matters even more. What puts you in the upper class in Jackson, Mississippi might only get you to middle class in San Francisco or New York City. The cost of living variations across America are so extreme that they essentially create different economic realities in different regions. In Connecticut, you need to earn over $950,000 annually just to crack the top 1% of earners in that state. But in West Virginia, the threshold for the top 1% is only around $400,000 annually. This means that someone with a $2.5 million net worth might live like royalty in a small Midwest town with a massive house, luxury cars, and the ability to afford anything they want locally. But that same $2.5 million in Manhattan might get you a modest apartment and a comfortable but not extravagant lifestyle. Understanding these geographic variations is crucial for making smart financial decisions. Some people spend their entire careers chasing higher salaries in expensive cities, not realizing that they might actually improve their standard of living by earning less money in a lower-cost area. Others stay in expensive areas because they love the lifestyle and opportunities, even though it means they will need to accumulate significantly more wealth to achieve the same level of financial security. The rise of remote work has changed the geography game. Now you can earn a San Francisco salary while living in Boise or Tulsa. That is a massive wealth-building opportunity. If you can keep your high income and lower your housing costs dramatically, your savings rate can skyrocket. So, where does all of this leave you? Whether you are looking at these numbers and feeling encouraged about your progress or realizing you have more work to do than you thought, the most important thing is understanding that these categories are not permanent destinations. People move between these wealth categories all the time, and the factors that determine which direction they move are often more within their control than they realize. The first behavior that separates wealth builders from everyone else is understanding the difference between looking wealthy and being wealthy. This might sound obvious, but it is probably the most common mistake Americans make with money. Social media has created a culture where everyone is trying to project success through their purchases. People finance luxury cars they cannot afford, buy houses that stretch their budgets to the breaking point, and rack up credit card debt funding lifestyles that look impressive but actually prevent them from building real wealth. Meanwhile, many genuinely wealthy people drive modest cars, live in reasonable houses, and spend money in ways that would surprise you. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. That house is now worth around $650,000, which sounds like a lot until you realize the guy is worth over $100 billion. He could literally buy a different mansion every day of the year and not notice the financial impact. The second behavior is understanding opportunity cost. Wealthy people do not just ask, "Can I afford the monthly payment?" They ask, "What could this money have grown into if I had invested it instead?" That $45,000 car might cost you $650 a month, but over 20 years, that $650 a month invested at 8% could grow into over $380,000. That is the true cost of the car. The third behavior is paying yourself first. Wealthy people automate their savings and investments before they pay any bills. They treat saving like a non-negotiable expense. If you wait to save what is left over, there will never be anything left over. Flip the script. Save first, spend the rest. The fourth behavior is avoiding high-interest debt. Credit cards, payday loans, and even some car loans charge interest rates that make it nearly impossible to get ahead. If you are paying 22% interest on a credit card balance, every extra dollar you put toward that debt is earning a guaranteed 22% return. That beats any stock market investment. The fifth behavior is investing consistently, regardless of what the market is doing. Wealthy people do not try to time the market. They contribute every month, rain or shine. Over decades, that consistency beats almost any attempt to buy low and sell high. Let me give you a rough roadmap based on the data. These are median numbers, not averages, so they represent a typical household in each age group. By age 30, $25,000 to $50,000. By age 35, $70,000 to $100,000. By age 40, $120,000 to $180,000. By age 45, $180,000 to $250,000. By age 50, $250,000 to $400,000. By age 55, $350,000 to $550,000. By age 60, $450,000 to $700,000. By age 65, $550,000 to $850,000. These numbers account for home equity, retirement accounts, and savings. If you are below these ranges, do not panic. You have time to catch up. If you are above them, you are doing great. The key is to keep progressing. If you start saving $500 a month at age 25, you will have about $1.2 million by age 65 at 7% returns. If you wait until 35, you will have about $560,000. The same monthly contribution, but starting 10 years later, cuts your final number in half. Time is the most powerful force in wealth building. For completeness, let us talk about the ultra-wealthy, the top 0.01%. That threshold is roughly $250 million in net worth. These are the people who own sports teams, private islands, and multiple homes in different countries. Their wealth is so vast that they cannot spend it all in a lifetime. They employ teams of financial advisors, lawyers, and accountants to manage their assets. But here is the important takeaway. You do not need to be in that category to be happy, secure, and free. The jump from $2 million to $250 million does not bring 125 times more happiness. In fact, studies show that after about $150,000 in annual income, additional money has very little effect on day-to-day emotional well-being. So while it is fun to look at the top 0.01%, do not let their existence make you feel like a failure. They are statistical outliers. Your goal should be your own version of enough. So let us recap the real wealth classes in America based on net worth. These are my numbers, updated and unique. Lower class, $0 to $12,000, median around $5,800. Lower middle class, $12,000 to $45,000, median around $38,000. Middle class, $45,000 to $160,000, median around $148,000. Upper middle class, $160,000 to $700,000. Upper class, $700,000 and above. Top 1%, roughly $6.2 million to $14 million. Top 0.1%, roughly $68 million. Top 0.01%, roughly $250 million. But here is the most important thing I want you to take away from this video. These numbers are just snapshots in time. They are not life sentences. The wealthy did not get there by accident, and neither will you. The difference between staying stuck in one class versus climbing to the next often comes down to a handful of key financial behaviors that anyone can learn and implement. Stop worrying about what your neighbor drives or what your coworker posts on Instagram. Run your own race. Focus on your own net worth. Increase your savings rate. Avoid lifestyle inflation. Invest consistently. And let time do its work. If you are in the lower class today, you can move up. If you are in the middle class, you can reach upper middle. If you are in upper middle, you can become a millionaire. The path is clear. The math is on your side. You just have to start. If this breakdown helped clarify where you stand and where you want to go, smash that subscribe button and check out my video on the biggest money mistakes that keep people stuck in the wrong wealth class forever. I am Hamster. See you in the next one.